everybody, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 25, also known as Episode 50 of History's Greatest Idiots, the show where we go back through the annals of human history and give you stories of absolute brilliant stupidity so that you can learn lessons from them and never repeat those mistakes again. But who are we kidding? We're humans. We like to repeat mistakes. So much so that we've made 50 whole episodes about the utter stupidity. Toastazoid is already here. Sup, I feel like shit. Hey, Toasty, sorry about that. Hope you feel better. We'll try and perk you up a little bit.
Yeah.
He's got that cold.
Joining me is...
Yeah,
it's going.
Man. My wife's got it as well. Joining me as ever is my amazing co-host, Derek. Derek, how have you been the last 24 hours since we recorded our last episode?
Yeah, this is back-to-back. It's got me so excited.
I know. We're just
been
churning
laying
them
around
out
all
now,
day.
man. Yeah. It's one of those things where I was concerned that I wouldn't have enough material, but then I was out walking with my wife earlier after rescuing her car from a really stupid mistake, and I was like, oh, greatest practical joke of the 19th century. Perfect, because I'd watched a video on it weeks ago, and it's amazing. I can't wait to tell you about it.
I'm excited.
I am too. This has been a hell of a road getting here to 50 episodes, because I can remember when we started, we launched on April Fool's Day 2021. So this was a while ago now, full year and a half ago, more than that. And, since then we've done really well. We've covered loads and loads of idiots. We've had really nice interaction with some fans. We've produced nearly 100 hours of content at this point, which is just crazy.
So much talking.
I know. Who could imagine listening to us for that amount of time? If you ever want to do a back-to-back and maybe put us up against the Simpsons or something, I think they'd probably win because they got 500 episodes or whatever. But still, 100 hours of content is kind of amazing, because initially our first few episodes, we're only talking for 45 minutes, 50 minutes. And now we're clocking in at close to 2 hours every time.
And that's when we're like, oh, I got a short one today.
Yeah, we're like, oh, I won't be talking too long. It's only 8 pages, this one. But yeah, we end up talking much longer. But no, I've genuinely really enjoyed doing this podcast, and to do 50 episodes with you. It's just been an absolute pleasure, my man. I'm really pleased that we created this together. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I'm pleased as well. I'm happy to be here and learning things.
Yeah, it's been really informative. The stuff that we've covered and the conversations we've had with people about some of the episodes. We've got a nice little community going. I really hope that we can grow. I ultimately, I think both of us would like to be able to earn a really nice amount of money from this as some sort of job. I think ultimately we're a ways off yet, but we're making progress, and our most recent episode's doing really nicely. So if you want to go and listen to that, please do. And also the one we recorded yesterday, I have high hopes for. I've even created some incredibly fancy thumbnails for that one. So yeah, you can already see it on YouTube. So
I'm just happy that you do that stuff, because I am not so good with it.
I quite like doing the thumbnails. It's so much easier than it used to be. When I did my first degree in university back in 1999, last millennia, I had to learn to use the very first iterations of Photoshop and Dreamweaver and stuff like that to create websites. And I had to learn to use Flash, the very first version of that, more or less. And we had to learn HTML, and designing anything using that stuff back then was so much harder than it is now. You can go onto web applications and knock up a thumbnail, and I do it in 15 minutes, and then I do 3 versions of different sizes. But back then it would take you hours to do that shit, because there was nothing. You had to do it all originally. Now you can you've got assets that you can kind of alter and reuse and stuff from your own knowledge, and the font is so much better. It's just so much more intuitive. So actually being a graphic designer now is so much easier than it was back in the early days of digital. My God.
Thank goodness for technologies.
Yes. God bless you, Steve Jobs. You crazy bastard. Lev, I assure you, it's been quite hard. There's innuendo going on here. It's still quite hard. Take it from someone who's learning to use Blender. I don't know about Blender. What's Blender? What
I thought he said a blender for a second there, and I'm like, I don't get it.
Yeah, just put
Oh,
your hand in there and you're off to the races.
yeah,
Yeah,
nice
I guess
bright
like
red colors.
yes. I think like graphic design's always been quite hard, but it's certainly easier than like learning HTML code when you've never coded in your life before. So yeah. Anyway, getting sidetracked now. We're on 50 episodes. And Derek, we've both got reasonably short ones today, as I understand it. But can you tell me who your idiot for this 50th episode is, please?
Okay, well, we've covered scientists and politicians and cult leaders and
Hmm.
athletes, and today I wanna get to an inventor.
Wow.
And the
Okay.
reason that I want to get to him is because you've definitely used one of his most famous inventions, but you probably don't even know who he is.
Okay.
His name was Walter Hunt, and he was born July 29th, 1796, in Martinsburg, New York.
Okay. So
He
yeah.
was firstborn child of 13 children.
Holy shit.
Yeah, just popping them out like Pez,
Man.
man.
Yeah.
He received his childhood education as most people that had access to education back in 1796 in a one-room schoolhouse,
Oh yeah.
and then straight from there in his biography, it goes to him earning a master's degree in masonry, which I didn't know you could get a degree in masonry.
Yeah. Well, I guess like stonemasons, Freemasons, it was still a very important job at that time. So yeah, that's really interesting that you would have to study that. So
And it doesn't say what if there was a bachelor's, I guess.
yeah,
That's I
it
don't
would
know.
make sense. Bachelor of
Or
wouldn't be
maybe he's just a
arts.
master mason
Maybe.
down at the lodge at
Yeah,
you know.
maybe it was yeah, sacrificing things and all of that. Yeah, let's not get into Masonic rituals now. But yeah, I guess like it would have been combined with kind of the like an
Engineering type
apprenticeship.
stuff. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
like
Yeah,
that sort of
okay.
thing, an apprenticeship and engineering, because obviously things were very practical back then, so he would have learned on the job as well. But that's really interesting. So he's obviously come from a decent background if he's learning that at a young age. So
Yes, and then he gets, he goes from masonry to starting off his inventing career, and it happened when he went up to New York City in 1826, and while he was up there, he witnessed a horse-drawn carriage run over a little kid that wasn't
ooh.
paying attention when the carriage got out of control and it killed him. And he thought, you know what? What if there's a bell on that?
Yeah, it makes sense on that child or that
So
carriage.
his first invention is a metal bell that's operated with a hammer that's controlled by a driver's foot, so he doesn't have to take his hands off the reins and lose any control. And that way, you can alert any unsuspecting children before running them over and killing them. And
That's a really good invention. The first like kind of car horn type thing, essentially. Yeah, I mean
for exactly,
the driver could have just as easily gone, "Move out of the way, you little shit," or something like that, you know.
maybe
But
it's loud hooves or something, clip
yeah,
clops
that's
on
true.
the
Yeah,
cobblestones, and
yeah,
maybe if it was a dirt road, maybe it would have hurt him
mm,
a little
that's
more.
true. Yeah, horse-drawn carriages as quiet as electric cars back in the day. You know, really got to sound that horn. Holy shit.
Um, so he comes up with that bell, puts out a patent on July 30th, 1827. It's further developed and used throughout the US from there on, and actually goes on to be the streetcar
Mm,
alarm that they used in the cable cars. Um,
wow, that's interesting.
from there, he goes on to be kind of a prolific inventor. He invents all kinds of stuff,
Mm,
uh, all while he's also earning money as a real estate investor of sorts.
oh,
So
that's smart.
here's a list of some of his inventions. He invented a fire engine,
Okay,
an improvement for hard coal burning stoves,
nice.
the first home knife sharpener,
Oh wow. Okay, cool.
a
Yeah.
restaurant steam table apparatus, flax spinner. He improved oil lamps.
Oh, good.
The first rotary street sweeping machine he
Oh
came up with.
wow.
So he's making all of these practical, great inventions, and that's kind
Yeah,
of his niche. He's
that's great.
practical.
Yeah, he's furthering society, which you know, before commerce got into the world of inventing, like that was, you know, every invention moved society forwards. Whereas now it's like we're creating things to be bought, essentially. So it's arguable whether inventions are actually still furthering the cause of humanity. But actually, a lot of his inventions are, you know, helping things become easier, cleaner, more practical. You know, it's all kind of little inventions that will help people. So that's great.
Exactly. Well, and then, he has a couple that aren't necessarily furthering. Like
Okay.
he created the predecessor to the Winchester repeating rifle,
Ah, okay.
and he helped make bullets more bullety.
Oh,
But then
okay.
he also invented some ice plows and ice breaking wooden hull ships
Oh, wow.
and self closing inkwells.
Oh, that's
Or
awesome.
the
That's a really
predecessor,
cool invention.
yeah, the predecessor to the modern fountain pen as well.
That's incredible. So this guy's prolific in multiple different fields. So it's not just like home stuff. It's like urban, like kind of infrastructure. It's, you know, travel, weapons stuff. I'd imagine the bullets and weapons stuff. That's he probably would have earned a lot of money from that, and that would have funded some of his more niche projects. So that's really cool. You
Like
know?
unfortunately, he wasn't earning a lot of money
Oh,
with any of this. He was more or less selling away his patents and his ideas and his inventions for a little money here, a little money there, with no hope at
mm.
royalties.
Oh, that's
And
bad.
then sometime between 1834 and 1837, he actually developed the first modern sewing machine.
Oh, wow.
He is the one that came up with the cross stitch
Right.
machine, that basically is the modern sewing machine, but he
Yeah.
didn't even seek a patent for it because
Oh,
he was worried that it was going to create unemployment for seamstresses, and
right.
his daughter, I believe it was at the time, was running a corset shop, and that would have put 12 seamstresses out of business,
Oh,
and so he didn't submit the initial application until 1834, but he messed up the records and then didn't pursue it any further. And
right.
there was a little bit of a deal when Howe, the original patent for the sewing machine, HWOE,
Okay.
in the 1850s, he patented it, and then there was a little bit of a legal back and forth on whose it actually was. Turned out he Hunt never
Mhm.
followed through on it, so Howe's won the case, and
Right.
it was his. Although they had like a halving of it, split.
Right. Okay. So they were like, we've won this, but, you know, as a gesture, here's like 50%, I guess. So that's fine. That works out reasonably well for him, I guess.
It
So,
it wasn't much money.
mm,
Um, he ended up trying to or going on to sell it to Isaac Singer, his patent and
ah,
his version, which would have been a lot of money, but it wasn't, and we'll get to that in a minute.
okay.
Um, in 1849, while he was experimenting with some high tension wire, he came up with the safety pin, which is his most
Wow.
famous invention. He's the man that invented the safety pin, and it was an
Oh,
improvement on the way that they were held together before because it has that protective clasp where it holds in there,
wow.
and it's
That's
got
amazing.
this springy. And
Yeah.
the ones we use today are pretty much the same as the stuff that he invented in the 19th century.
That's incredible. I mean, obviously, like I knew that the design itself was old, and you know there are some designs that you just don't need to change because they're absolutely perfect. But that's amazing, and that has proliferated around the world for 200 years.
And at the time, he was just like, "Eh, it's all right." And he sold his patent for $400, which is right around 13,000 in
uh,
today's currency. He sold it
yeah.
to W.R. Grace and Company, who went on to make millions and millions of dollars in profit
Well, yeah.
off the safety pin.
So I just wish that residual rights were a thing back in the 18th century. It seems that this guy is responsible for significant improvements and yet has rarely benefited at all from them. That's really terrible.
He really kind of died broke,
Oh,
but his other most popular invention was the paper collar shirt. that was initially used for stage purposes and whatnot,
Yeah.
but they kind of caught on.
Mm.
And by like the 1860s, the paper collar shirt was so fashionable that there was 40 different factories making them in the United States.
Holy shit.
And this time he managed to actually sell the patent that he designed for a decent price and negotiated royalty payments. But unfortunately, while he was negotiating with Isaac Singer and trying to get this figured out, he died of pneumonia at his place of business in New York City on June 8th, 1859. So before he collected on any of the royalties or sales of his inventions, in 1868, the paper collar shirt would have made him a
Yeah,
huge millionaire.
absolutely.
He died
That's so sad.
mostly having given away or sold for next to nothing all of his patents.
Wow. That's crazy. Like to have invented as many things, dozens of different things as he did, and to have not made any real significant money from it. I mean, I guess like you could say $400, like $13,000. It's like that'll keep you going for a few years, I guess.
He ended up having to pay most of that to a draftsman that he used to do his patent drawings. So,
oh shit. Well, should have farmed that shit out. I guess it was before you could kind of find yourself a country with really dodgy labor laws that you could just hire to do that for you. But yeah, wow.
And I wonder if a little bit of it might have just been like him being a humble guy and
Sure.
just not thinking much of what he's doing, saying, "Hey, you know, and I'm doing this to make everything better, not get rich." But I don't know. I don't think you go into being an inventor to not make some money.
Yeah, I suspect this is one of those situations where, I mean, you know, maybe he was this kind of like, oh, I'm just doing this for the betterment of humanity and this society, and I get that. That's very noble, but you have to put food on the table as well, right? Like, you have to create your own success, and I feel like one of the reasons I was going to score this guy slightly higher than maybe I should is because he didn't seem to learn his lesson from these patents. Like, royalties, it wouldn't have been a large leap in logic to think, oh, maybe I should continue earning from this for the rest of my life. You know, like, here's the patent, you can have it for cheap, but I want like 5% of the annual profits that you make from it. Like, just something like that. Like, you do that over like 40 inventions or whatever it is.
You're just loaded.
Yeah. So I just think he's probably not a very good negotiator. I think the ultimate negotiation I've ever heard, and we're probably both very familiar with this, and I'm sure people will be in pop culture as well, is when George Lucas was making Star Wars and the budget was being squeezed tightly. And he was like, yeah, I'll lower my director's fee. I'll lower it right down. But I want all of the rights to the merchandise. And at the time, merchandise was not a big deal. Like, you could make like maybe a 12-inch toy, like this fucking huge thing that maybe a few kids would buy from Kenner or something like that. But he plowed through that. He kind of basically invented the 4-inch tall figures that would sell by the bucket load, and he made over $3 billion from the merchandise to Star Wars alone. And then obviously, as he got paid more and more as time went on, because he set up Lucasfilm and Industrial Light and Magic and all of these different things. So essentially, George Lucas, who I've heard people describe him somewhat unfairly as a fucking idiot who got lucky once, was a very good negotiator. Like, he was onto something. He knew that kids would enjoy the film because he crafted this like story that fit into the hero's arc really well, had really well-defined characters, and they had options for future films. And he was like, this is going to be the dawn of something new. I'm going to establish it and I'll go from there. Whereas this guy is creating hugely influential things, which if he'd had any kind of vision, he'd have made a lot of money if he just had the foresight to just negotiate. And he doesn't even need to do that. Just hire a lawyer. A lawyer will do that shit for you.
That's
You
the
know?
sad thing, is that he did have a lawyer
Oh,
that just really didn't do that great of a job.
wow. Okay, so lawyer's fault. Lawyer
Yeah,
fucked him. Yeah.
probably. Yeah.
Toastoid
Elias Howe,
here.
that's the name of that guy.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Toastoid here with the classic "The Empire did nothing wrong." It's debatable. So, but yeah, I feel like as a result of, and I get it. Like some people are brilliant in one thing, like they are just absolute geniuses at this thing, but then like everything else, they're just either terrible or not really very good at. You know, my grandfather was like a mathematical genius, but he had to drive. He'd go out to work in the morning, and he'd have to drive back home like 2 times because he'd like forgotten his jacket, and then he'd leave, and he'd like, oh, I forgot my lunch as well. So he had a terrible memory, and was really disorganized. But he was a mathematical genius, so you know his memory was so focused on all of this incredible information that he could use, basic stuff just went out the window. Like, you haven't shaved in like 3 weeks. Oh yeah, I should do that, shouldn't I? So like back in the day when everyone had to shave. But I guess this guy, because he could have been, and not just that, with the wealth that he could have accumulated, would have come better standards of living, possibly better health as a result. He could have lived longer. He could have invented more things. He could have provided more for the human race,
Yeah,
potentially. I feel like I'm going to give this guy like a 70
that seems,
because,
yeah.
yeah, like he didn't really do anything wrong. He just kind of didn't do anything to further his own career. And as much as I'm a socialist and like I feel like, you know, kind of generating stuff that helps the wider community and the wider world and all of that is the ultimate goal for most people. I feel that in the society we live in, you do also have to provide yourself with a certain comfort so that you can continue to do that. You know, you
Well,
can't live in abject poverty for your entire life and then only like discover after the fact that you could have been so much greater. You know, it's such a daft thing. How many innocent men and women were on the Death Stars when the rebels blew it up? Well, they were contractors. We've if you've watched Clerks, you'll
oh
know that
boy.
they were contractors who knew what political situation they were getting into. They made a choice to work on that site, knowing just well that the Empire was at war. They knew the risks going into that, and they decided to take it. So no, do not have any sympathy for those contractors that worked on the Death Star. Um, so yeah, I'm sorry. What was the guy's name again?
It's Walter Hunt, the inventor of the safety pin.
Wow, Walter Hunt. Yeah, a solid 70. If he'd been like an asshole as well, then you know he would have scored higher. But it sounds like he's just a guy that invented stuff and didn't negotiate really that well.
Well,
So
and then so like he allowed his wife and his sister to influence him on not patenting the sewing machine
ugh,
because they were seamstresses or involved in
mm.
seamstressing.
Yeah, and I feel like that whole it's going to take away work from this person. It's like that's not necessarily the case. Like, and I feel like that's kind of an argument that we've heard before for like the fossil fuel industry, who are like, oh well, we have to protect American jobs because if we go renewable, then what are these oil workers going to do? Well, just like they can get jobs in the new industry because they're experts in energy production. And if you slowly dismantle this thing while they're being trained and moved into the new sector, then there's no loss of earnings. They can just make a seamless transition, and you've eventually done away with fossil fuels. It's like it's a
I don't know
no-brainer.
why that seems like outside of the realm of people's thinking. Like, oh, but it's not just all going to go away. And even like
Yeah,
when your job is taken away and replaced, or you're replaced by a robot or whatever,
yeah,
um, you find the next thing to do.
you
It's
do.
just
And
called
also,
living.
exactly, and you probably get a severance package. So, you know, if you're being made redundant, you will get a redundancy package, which will be, I don't know, 6 months, possibly a year, depending on what it is. But if you accept retraining in a different field, and then the apparatus with which the old way is dismantled and the new way comes in, you don't lose anything. So,
Well, yeah,
He
the
should
retraining to operate the robot, you know?
exactly straightforward. Like you need people in those situations, so it wouldn't have been difficult. Toastoid here with a good point. He would have invented a safe version of mustard gas, otherwise known as Febreze. Yeah, you may not have Febreze over in the States, but yeah, man, gets rid of odors by making everything else smell like cheap perfume. So,
Yeah.
from an inventor who didn't really kind of do himself any favors, I think it's fair to say, to something that's really light-hearted. I mean, yesterday when we recorded our podcast, we featured the main architect of the Spanish Inquisition
Mhm, mhm.
and a president who was quite corrupt and a womanizer. It's a bit light-hearted for the 50th episode. We've had an inventor who really should have done better by himself. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have the greatest practical joke of the 19th century, possibly of all time, depending on who you talk to, because multiple historians have covered this. It's the most famous thing that either of these two guys have done. So, but in terms of practical jokes on the mainstream, wasn't expecting that in an episode. No. So, the greatest practical joke of the 19th century / possibly of all time, the Berners Street hoax. So, before we get
Okay.
into the actual practical joke itself, we have to discuss the life or lives of the people involved in the actual hoax itself, starting with the more notorious of the two and the more kind of flamboyant and stupid, really, of the two. Theodore Edward Hook, who was born on the 22nd of September 1788 in Charlotte Street, Bedford Square, London. His father, James Hook, 1746 to 1827, was a composer, and his elder brother, also called James Hook, became Dean of Worcester. So that's like a reasonably high up position. So they're a well-to-do family, essentially.
Okay.
They're kind of like landed gentry, not quite aristocracy, but they will have a house and probably like a cook and a butler and a cleaner and
Oh, and
yeah.
a cook and a butler and a cleaner?
Fuck yes, I want that too. You know, like I want staff. I don't want to have to think about cooking. I just want to get, hey, I feel like this today. Can you take care of that for me? Thanks, buddy. But yeah, he took up residence at St Mary's Hall, Oxford University when he was going to university, leaving after just 2 terms because this guy was a bit of a loose cannon. His gift of improvising songs charmed the Prince Regent into a declaration that something must be done for Hook. Who was basically like, it was a bit of a layabout, but he was really entertaining and really funny and like had a charismatic charm to him. So Hook was hooked up with the position of accountant general and treasurer of Mauritius.
Huh?
So that's a
What's a
pretty good
Mauritius?
gig. Mauritius is a beautiful tropical island.
Oh,
Yeah, that's a
so
good posting right there.
goes to school, makes a good friend, and then says,
Yeah.
"Screw this! I'm gonna go kick it somewhere tropical."
Yeah, it's funny because you know, if you're going to make friends, you might want to cozy up to, you know, the Prince Regent. But yeah, so Mauritius, I've just googled it now. If you just go onto Google and type in Mauritius, it's an Indian Ocean island off the east coast of Africa, I think. Is that right? It's not big, but oh, it's so gorgeous. It's not far from Madagascar. So it's in
Oh,
that part of the world. It's so stunningly beautiful.
yeah, it
And
is.
yeah, you're looking at pictures now, aren't you?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
am.
Oh yeah. Suddenly you want to go to Mauritius, don't you? That's a hell of a place to be stationed. And this guy's out there in the tropical paradise, and he is the accountant general and treasurer of Mauritius with a salary of £2,000 a year, which in today's money is 142,000. Oh no, sorry, no, $194,000. So that's
Wow,
some good money right there. And
that's
also,
not
you know,
bad.
also because he's the accountant general and treasurer, he will be living in state accommodation. So they will have like a home made for him because he's this official position. So
Well, and he's kind of the person running the money for the place
yeah,
where he is too.
exactly. So
Nice.
yeah, so he's in an official state-run thing. He'll have his own servants. He's got a really nice income from
With
this,
no bills.
with the bills paid for, essentially. And yeah, it's just It's good living if you can get it, you know. Unfortunately, he was the life and soul of the island from his arrival in October 1813, but a serious deficiency was discovered in the treasury accounts in 1817, and he was arrested and brought to England on a criminal charge. A sum of £12,000, $1.4 million in 2022 terms, had been extracted by a deputy official, and Hook was held responsible. So he kind of had a bit of a hand in it. So
yeah, he either did it or he let somebody do it to him.
I don't understand. Like, you're in a place where everything is taken care of. You're surrounded by servants. You don't have to think about looking after the house. That's taken care of. You can enjoy the tropical wonderfulness and sit on beaches and sip coconut juice all day long. All you have to fucking do is your job well. That's it, right? Make sure nobody steals from you. And he couldn't even do that. So he was held responsible. Yeah. During the scrutiny of the audit board, he lived obscurely and maintained himself by writing for magazines and newspapers. In 1820, he launched the newspaper John Bull, which championed the champion of high Toryism and the virulent detractor of Queen Caroline. I have no idea who that is.
It's like a fiction story?
It's basically like an older version of The Onion, essentially.
Okay.
Like, imagine. Oh, actually, I guess Babylon B would be more appropriate because it's conservative.
Okay.
So Toryism in that day would have been a little different, but yeah, basically conservative. So yeah, he's a bit like Babylon B-ish, I guess you could say, and it's witty and like poking fun at famous people and stuff like that. Anyway, so witty criticisms and pitiless invective secured it a large circulation, and Hook derived, for the first year at least, an income of £2,000 from the circulation of this magazine. He's doing all right for himself. He was, however, arrested for the second time on account of his debt to the state, which he made absolutely no effort to pay back. So yeah,
he stole, or
he was either involved directly with, or So he's then sent to prison for 2 years, which for a man of his stature was really bad. However, while he's in prison, he starts writing again, and he writes a bunch of letters, he writes a bunch of books, and the rest of his life is basically spent writing a series of somewhat successful books and becoming famous for another thing as well. He is the owner, or at least, and also the recipient of the world's oldest postcard, which was sent to Hook in 1840, bearing a penny black stamp. Hook probably created posted the card to himself as a practical joke on the postal service, since the image is a caricature of workers in the post office. So he made this fucking thing, taking the mick out of them, posted it to himself, and was the recipient of the first ever postcard. In 2002, the postcard sold at auction for £31,750.
Wow.
That's and back then that would have been like $50,000 for a fucking postcard. So kind of famous. He's an interesting guy, is old Teddy Hook here. So
he's a writer and a practical joker from prison.
Yeah, and like kind of like he's quite creative, but he doesn't seem to be able to focus on like the important stuff in life. And he was given enough rope to hang himself with, and he duly did. But he lived out his life in relative comfort, writing these like a series of books and stuff like that, and doing quite well for himself. Now to the second person. Samuel Beasley, by comparison, is much calmer and much more laid back. Was born in Westminster in 1786, the son of Samuel Beasley and his and his wife Anne nee Frith. Both facets of Beasley's future career were displayed when he was still a boy at school at Acton, which is like a private school in London. Age 12, he wrote a farce and constructed the stage on which his school friends performed it. So,
wow.
Yeah, that's incredible, really.
So stagehand and a writer. Did he direct as well?
I know, he just like tap dancing on his own stage, singing, playing all the instruments. But at this age, he already showed signs of considerable taste for art and sorry, I've lost my cursor, and a dramatic talent. According to a tribute in the Journal of Society of Architects, he was trained as an architect by his uncle Charles Beasley, the architect of the much admired Church of Faversham. So, Microwave Boy, hello. I don't think we've had you here before, but hello, welcome to the stream and welcome to the podcast for future reference. So back to Samuel Beasley.
I want to call him Beezy now, though.
Beasley, I know, it's a better name,
he's
right?
Beezy.
Beasley. During his time in London, Beasley practiced as an architect and at the same time wrote plays. He'd already had a work professionally produced at the Theatre Royal English Opera Lyceum in 1811, The Boarding House, or 5 Hours at Brighton, a musical farce in 2 acts. So he's already doing all right for himself. You know,
he's like a Saturday Night Live writer type of thing, right?
Essentially, yeah. Okay. Also able to build the sets. So,
which is and an architect.
And an architect, like a qualified architect who can write interesting, funny stuff. In 1816, he designed a new theatre for the site in which one of the first productions was his operette, Is He Jealous? A reviewer wrote, "It's a translation from the French, but Mr. Beasley and a most entertaining little thing it is. We have seen nothing for a long time that has pleased us so much." So he's good. Basically,
getting the good reviews, not in prison writing postcards.
Yeah, unlike his friend. So for the same theatre, Beasley wrote the short operetta, Fire and Water in 1817. It was revived on numerous occasions over the next 3 years. The business of this piece is made up of a scheme of a petulant old man who proposes to marry a young lady, and of the efforts of a rattle-brained young lover to baffle him and to carry off the prize. So it's essentially like Jeffrey Epstein in an operetta or something like that, I guess, maybe. Beasley continued to write for the stage, producing more than 100 comedies, farces, comic operas, and operettas. So successful guy who didn't end up in prison like his best mate.
Yeah, so. He's like the Adam Sandler of the 1800s. Where is
1800s? Yeah, 1800s. Yeah, only he gets good reviews.
So, yeah, good point.
So yeah, basically, yeah, he's done really well for himself. So both of these guys kind of sort of famous for their time, but not like, you don't hear about like Samuel Beasley or Teddy Hook or anything like that. There's just sort of lost to history at this point. However, this practical joke they pulled is like, it will live on forever, and it's fucking brilliant. So both are sort of successful, but then 1809 rolls around. Famed English author Teddy Hook made a bet with his closest friend, the noted architect and writer Samuel Beasley, that within 1 week he could make any house in London the most talked about place in the city. Yeah. Now, just off the bat, what do you think that means? Like, what would involve?
He wrote satire newspaper stuff, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So I would imagine some sort of posting in a paper.
Sure.
Maybe.
Yeah, that makes sense. That you would think he would leverage his journalistic connections, maybe, or some of his powerful friends to get involved with this. But this goes way beyond any of that. It's kind of crazy. So the house he ended up choosing as the home was the house of the widow Mrs. Tottenham on 54 Berner Street, London, which was the same street that Earl Stanhope and the Bishop of Carlisle and of Chester, among other wealthy and well-to-do individuals, lived on at the time. It isn't known why Hook chose Mrs. Tottenham's home, as no connection between the two is known, and Hook himself never explained his selection. It's entirely possible that it just happened to be a location where the home across the street could be rented and was also in a fairly well-to-do part of town, which would help assure that Hook's plan would work. So So he's rented the apartment across the street so that he can watch this unfold like some sort of fucking Bond villain.
He's
But
tinkering. Yeah, okay.
he's planning ahead with this. And also he's like, it has to be in a rich area. Otherwise, nobody's going to believe this scenario and it's not going to work. So there's your setup for this. Whatever the case. And I think also, this is my just aside, I think he's doing it to fuck with other rich people he didn't like. Like, he probably
Probably.
didn't like one or two of the people in that street. And he's like, oh, fuck it. I'm going to mess with this street. So,
And that's probably how he chose the one that he did, where he didn't have a connection, so he could mess with
exactly.
the ones where he wanted without being like, "Oh, I wasn't going after you."
Yeah. It's
Makes
nothing to
sense.
do with you. You just happen to be caught up in all this. Whatever the case, the event began on November the 27th. Hook and Beasley positioned themselves in the home across the street, and around 5 a.m., the fun began. First, a chimney sweep arrived. The problem was that Mrs. Tottenham hadn't requested the services of a sweep. Within a few minutes, 12 more chimney sweeps arrived. They were also turned away. Just, fuck off, kids. Go away.
Oh,
Jesus, there's
man.
12 of you. So it's the start of this is the you ordered these 20 pizzas
Yeah.
sort of thing. Like, that's the start of it. However, next, coal delivery workers began showing up with several large carts packed with coal to be delivered to Mrs. Tottenham. They were turned away as well. So you've got like 6 massive wagons full of coal that show up after the chimney sweep. At this point, she must have been like, something's happening here. And I don't like I don't like it. First of all, who likes being woken up at 5 a.m. by a fucking chimney sweep? It's like, go away.
Yeah.
I don't want to wake up for another 2 hours. Leave me alone. And so following the coal delivery, a cartload of furniture arrived. Then workers showed up with a coffin bearing the name of Mrs. Tottenham. That took a fucking turn right there. That's dark.
Ouch.
Yeah. Holy shit. So she tries to turn them away, but there's like 5 cartloads of like coal in the way at this point. So it's starting to get a bit crazy. Next came several cake makers attempting to deliver very large custom-made wedding cakes. They must have been very confused by the gravestone and the coffin that they saw outside the front door. Then several other chefs arrived, attempting to deliver a total of around 2,500 raspberry tarts.
Holy crap.
That's a lot. And they're the size, I mean, they're not big. They're like the size of your hand, basically, but 2,500 of the fucking things, plus all these wedding cakes. You got a bunch of coal. You got like tombstones and coffins lying around. You got chimney sweeps going, what the fuck's going on? Like just walking around. After that, several doctors. Okay, I have to take a breath here because this is a lot.
Well, this is all in one day?
This is in the first 2 hours.
Holy shit.
It's about to get worse because I have to take a deep breath for this. After that, several doctors, lawyers, gardeners, fishmongers, dentists, grocers, priests, couch makers, carpet manufacturers, wig makers, coach makers, curiosity dealers, opticians, brewers, and shoemakers, amongst others, arrived.
So everybody.
Everyone in London showed up to this fucking address. I'll just give that list again. Several doctors, lawyers, gardeners, fishmongers, so more fucking disgusting smelling food, dentists, grocers, priests, couch makers, which is because she's already had furniture, so why not have couch makers show up? Carpet manufacturers. I know, yeah. And carpet manufacturers, like, where do they think they're going? They need like raw materials to make that shit. She's not going to have it. Wig makers, that's hilarious. Coach makers, so like, well, we've got to get this stuff out of here, so we might as well make coaches while we're here. Curiosity dealers, which I guess would have been like antique dealers at the time. Opticians, brewers, that's like, yeah, this is becoming a party. Why not invite brewers? Shoemakers and others arrived. They all came offering their services, all bringing very large orders of their wares that were to be delivered to Mrs. Tottenham's address at various times throughout the day. Now, she's up to about midday at this point.
Okay.
So, like, the first 6 hours of her morning have been a bit fucking intense, and she's just like ready for it to be over, but it's just beginning.
Man. Did they obviously they didn't have to like prepay for this stuff.
Apparently not. Like, you'd think that some of these services you'd require a deposit. I mean, maybe they did pay for it. Maybe, this is part of the bet. Maybe they're like, well, it's worth it for the bet. And they both sound reasonably well off. But apparently
How
in
much is
London in the night,
2,000 tarts?
I know, 2,500 tarts. That is a shitload of money. And all of these wedding cakes, which would not have been cheap, all this furniture that just
Right.
showed up. Fuck me. And like,
Sent it all COD.
yeah, I part of me wants to imagine that they're watching all this unfold, and then they walk out of their apartment and just be like, "Hey, what's going on here?" and just like buy a couple of tarts or just take them or whatever. So yeah, they all came offering their services, bringing very large orders to Mrs. Tottenham's address at various times throughout the day. At one point, over 1 dozen pianos were delivered to her doorstep.
How do you even get 1 dozen pianos on a doorstep?
I know, and we're not talking small things. This is before like player pianos were invented. These are fucking baby grands here.
Ugh.
These are big fucking pianos. After that, 6 men carrying a huge chamber organ showed up to deliver it to her address, like the kind of thing you have in a fucking church.
Yeah, the big pipes and
Yeah, with the
yeah.
tubular bells and shit. Holy
Wow.
god. So yeah, that it's become absolute chaos. Eventually, the dignitaries arrived, including the Governor of the Bank of England, the Duke of York, the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Mayor of London, the Lord Chief Justice, several cabinet ministers, and the chairman of the East India Company all showed up at this poor woman's doorstep.
How do you get all those people in one
I
place?
don't know. This is amazing. Like, and this is the thing is, like, people have questioned the authenticity of this. There are articles from the time, multiple articles quoting exactly the same sequence of events that happened. So it happened. All of this stuff is completely genuine, and that amazes me. That not only have you got all this craziness happening, but then like all of these famous people show up, and it just keeps getting weirder throughout the entire day. Various parties and delivery people crowded the area outside of 54 Berner Street. By midday, the streets in the area of London became so crowded that the roads were jammed for several blocks in every direction with delivery people and onlookers. So obviously it's drawn a crowd at this point, and probably thieves as well, I'd imagine. So it's kind of gone a bit crazy. All the while, Hook and Beasley sat and watched the chaos from across the street. Hook's part in the madness, which did indeed become the talk of London, was not known until much later when he eventually confessed while he was in prison. He did it all by sending around 4,000 letters out to various entities in London, ordering various items from the simple to the outlandish. He also wrote to several notable individuals, like the Lord Mayor of London, creating tales sufficient to get those people to come and call on Mrs. Tottenham on that day. Basically, just party at this lady's house. Just that sort of
I
thing.
would imagine it was like some sort of like drawn out Make-A-Wish letter and stuff for some of them.
Well, actually, one of them was, and that's a very good guess. What was written in most of the letters to convince these people to come isn't known. One of the few that is known is the letter to the Mayor of London. Once he realized that everyone there was a victim of an elaborate practical joke, he went to the police station. At the police station, the mayor stated that he had received a letter, supposedly from Mrs. Tottenham, explaining that she was at death's door, and she requested that the mayor call upon her home to bear witness to a deposition she would give under oath. So he was like, "Ooh, some juicy shit's about to be, like she's going to confess something serious here. I have to attend this address." And he shows up, and there's fucking fish and like chimney sweeps and coal everywhere.
Gotcha.
And shit. Pianos. Like, yeah. Oh my God. I thought I was coming here for the scoop of a lifetime that could help make my career, but no, it's just an elaborate joke. After the hoax was revealed, the mayor sent officers out to attempt to instill some order in the chaos on the streets, including attempting to calm the crowds who were reportedly on the brink of rioting when the streets jammed with angry travelers and hundreds of merchants who were infuriated that Mrs. Tottenham would not pay for the often massive orders of their wares they had come to deliver. Lady, you
Oh my
fucking cough
goodness.
up. I don't care if it's a hoax. Like, oh my God.
Yeah,
Um,
God, think of the money some of those poor small business
I know.
owners lost.
I know. I mean, yeah, I think one of the saving graces is a lot of them had their names included in the actual articles themselves. So it would have been like so and so Smith's, and then you'd have an interview with them. I delivered the finest furniture to this address, and now it's not his. Like it's kind of free publicity to a certain extent, but that many people showed up that you couldn't have gotten everyone
Well, and
involved.
there's 10 of this and 5 of that, and I
Uh,
mean, now you got to compete with the other 10 chimney sweeps on who gets the publicity.
Yeah, I was the cheapest. Interview me. Some of these products were also completely destroyed by the crowds in the attempted delivery. Along with the damaged goods, several fights broke out throughout the day among the pressing masses and the delivery drivers who were angry that they were blocking each other.
Right?
I've,
Get out of the
I've got these
way.
parts to deliver. Move your fucking coal van. Once the crowds dissipated late in the evening, Hook and Beasley emerged from the house across the street and went home. For successfully making the home the talk of London within a week of the bet, Hook reportedly received a guinea from Beasley. How much is a guinea, you might ask? It's the equivalent of £1 in 2022 money. $1. It's Brewster's Millions.
Oh my
Or
God,
not,
it
not Brewster's
is.
Millions. No, it's oh, what's that film with
Is it
Eddie
Trading Place?
Murphy? Trading Places. That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah, where they bet
Yeah.
$1 that they can't like ruin his life and then it's returned on them. So that's the story of Messrs. Beasley and Hook, the Berner Street hoax, the greatest practical joke of the 19th century. I have to ask Derek, what do you think of this?
Well, it's hilarious, but then it's
Yeah.
also like
Kind of
kind
cruel.
of sad, and yeah, because I mean that poor person that baked those 2,500 tarts,
Yeah.
and the
Shit.
poor chimney sweep number 5 who never got an interview.
How many chimneys do you have, lady? There's already 4 of us here. What's going on?
I mean, God, he did exactly what he said he was going to do. So props for that.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's a super, super great writer.
Yeah.
You've got to be convincing as hell. So more props for that. But yeah, all of that for $1 probably ruined some of those businesses.
I would imagine so. Yeah. Kind of cruel.
Yeah. And that poor old lady. I mean, I assume she's old.
Poor Miss. Oh yeah. Well, she's a widow, but you know, this is Victorian England. She could have been a widow at like 25 or something.
Yeah.
You know, so, she could have been married at like 16, and he might have been dead 3 years later from typhoid or something. So you just don't know. But you know, the fact that she's a widow, kind of, and living in a good house, kind of, hints that she's probably reasonably old. So.
I was gonna say that, you know, that reminds me of a practical joke that happened here with a radio DJ.
Oh yeah,
called up a widow of a baseball pitcher, the St. Louis Cardinals pitcher that had passed away like a year ago. We were playing the Diamondbacks in like the playoffs or something. He called and asked her out on a date on the air, and yeah, he lost his job though.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, messing with widows is not cool.
That's not good. No, I think it's funny. We've both worked in the radio industry, and there are some kind of classic practical jokes that seem to kind of go round the radio industry. I do remember that a few years ago, and there was a family who were like desperate attention seekers on reality shows, and they employed a practical joke that they said, no, it definitely happened. We shouldn't have gone to jail for this. They basically they'd created a weather balloon that created
Balloon boy.
Balloon boy. And Balloon Boy was in the balloon, and then the balloon went up, and then obviously the whole fucking state turned out to try and get the balloon down safely. And then, it turns out he was in the attic all along. That, and a load of people were like, I don't think it was planned. I don't think it was a publicity stunt. I think they've been hard done by justice. I can tell you for an absolute 100% fact that they knew exactly what they were doing, because that same practical joke had happened in the radio industry in the UK at least 5 times. And it was always the same setup. It was, I'm here at the side of the road with local balloon expert, blah, blah, blah. And he's put his kitten in the carriage. And, oh, doesn't the kitten look good? Oh, my God, the kitten's gone in the sky. And you would then, because it's radio, and obviously people are like, oh, my God, we need to look up at the sky to find this fucking balloon. You've got like, you get like drivers calling in saying, I think I can see a balloon. I'm looking up at the sky and there's something that looks like a balloon in the sky. And it's basically like, it's a way to draw out like an hour's worth of programming, but also maybe like get some people calling in, get like the money that you get for the phone calls and shit like that, maybe get their name so they can enter a competition or a giveaway or something. I had seen that done. At one point, it was done by the same network, just in different locations. So you'd have like their Nottingham station do it, and then the same station, a different station in Newcastle would do the same thing on the same day. So I knew the Balloon Boy shit was fake straight away. I was like, they have done this. And obviously, because it's America, and also they'd been stupid enough to do it on television. Like the balloon had fucked off on television. They'd gotten state authorities involved. And when you involve the police and like officials and stuff like that, they do not like to be made to look stupid. So when it turns out it's a hoax, you're going to prison.
Yeah, basically. Like the mayor of London there, who was like, wait a second, I'm going to the cops.
Yeah, I'm getting my police involved. We need more people in this street. But boss, we're on overtime now. I will pay you in tarts. Apparently there's enough there, so just get in the street. But,
this one's a difficult one, I think, to score.
Yeah, I would agree.
It's a great prank, but it's also cruel.
It is definitely cruel. I wonder how much actual thought went into like, oh, what happens if like some stuff gets damaged or fights break out, or if this old woman has a heart attack and dies on the spot because of the stress. Like,
yeah, I don't imagine he thought anything about that.
No, it was just like, fuck it, I'm gonna have some fun. So,
right, for $1.
Yeah, for $1. Holy shit.
Yeah. So. Gosh. It's a great prank, though, and I mean, it's the original. Here's you ordered 20 pizzas, and so I love that.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I should score him high or low for the greatness of the prank.
Yeah, I think, and again, we've done this before in the past where we've, history's greatest idiots. The emphasis on certain parts of that name is different from person to person. So when we say idiot, we're thinking like, people who have been made huge mistakes and not learned from them, or done terrible, stupid, horrible, awful things. And then we've got like the greatest side of it, which is like Odorous Among Us, and like maybe what's his name, Rick James, bitch.
Oh, so
like the kind of the greatness aspect of it, where like, okay, yeah, they probably did some awful, terrible things, but at the same time, the greatness aspect of it can't be ignored. So it's kind of slightly idiotic with the cruelness of this, but also great because kind of audacious, really.
Yeah, and let's see. I think because it's probably the greatest prank of all time, and not just the 19th century.
Yeah,
because it got way too out of hand to just not be totally great. I'm gonna go with an 80 for this one.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's a good joke. And also, we should point out, because there's essentially 2 people involved in this prank, but I get the sense that Samuel Beasley, or Beasy here, I feel like he was a bit of a more of a like, I think Hook liked him because obviously they were friends, and he was like, I'm going to entertain my friend. So I feel like the majority of that score needs to go to Teddy Hook, because he seems like the guy that's like kind of, well, I mean, obviously it was his bet, but like he went all out with this bet to make sure it happened. Whereas Samuel Beasley, 4,000 letters in a week.
Yeah.
How many of that would be a day? That's kind of crazy.
And he had to have been doing it by hand, right?
Exactly. Yeah. There's no printing press involved in this. He's not typing it. So holy shit. So he's handwriting all of these letters. I mean, some of them would have been ledgers, right? Some of them would have been 2,500. Maybe he'd have to justify it by saying wedding or something like that, or like funeral, or, something that would kind of make them believe that this is a genuine order. I mean, 5 pianos. I don't know how you swing that one, but you know, something would have been done, but I believe that he would have put a lot of effort into the dignitaries. I mean, the Archbishop of Canterbury. I mean, we talk about like the Mayor of London. It's in London, like it's no massive deal. But the Archbishop of Canterbury, he's come up from like the furthest reaches of Kent. Like he's traveled 300 miles for this shit to get
Wow,
to
and
London
seeing
to
that
see
had to
that.
take some forethought too.
Yeah, that's like he's going to need a couple of days to get here because he's getting in a horse-drawn carriage and they can only do like 10 miles an hour. So
Hopefully, it's
that's
got a bell.
yeah, hopefully it's got a bell that's been invented and then sold off for a pittance. But yeah, so much planning went into this, and to have done it inside a week is kind of amazing. I mean, I guess maybe the Archbishop of Canterbury might have been in London, maybe for an engagement or something. But yeah, like to get the head of the East India Company, who was almost as powerful as the Prime Minister and the King at this point in time, like the East India Trade Company were incredibly powerful. To get him to show up, that's like a feat.
It
Holy
had to
shit!
be. It had to be his inside knowledge of
Yeah,
working in government and being
yeah.
friends with the Prince Regent and whatnot.
Yeah, I feel like there's more to this story. I feel like he probably had help as well. Like I bet he employed kind of friends who had connections or leaned on someone. I suspect like it can't just be this one guy writing 4,000 letters in a week. Like that just doesn't quite add up for me. I feel like he has maybe
A, pro-
journalistic friends
a
or something.
production team like
A
Punked.
yeah, a full fucking production team to help him with this shit because all of this for a guinea, like he's just one of those free spirit guys who's just doing something for the sake of doing it. So I like that aspect of it. But yeah, I definitely think that even though he's confessed to it, I think he had a lot of help. And Netflix, if you're out there, I mean, this is gold for a 90-minute like
I think I'm going to start
show.
writing this movie.
This is a great movie to watch because not only do you have the constant narrative of all of these fucking people showing up and this chaos happening, you've also got the kind of the intrigue of this guy's life where he's like sent to a paradise and fucks it up and ends up in prison, but then becomes a successful writer. And you know, there's a whole B story right there. So, you
Yeah.
know, I feel like this is a 90-minute historic comedy that would be quite nicely done. You know, you could take the same tone as those Enola Holmes films that have done quite well. You know, they're quite light-hearted.
Yeah.
So, you know, I just Netflix do it and chuck us a bunch of money, please.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
our
Do
50th
that.
episode. Yeah, we need some Netflix money. So that's our show. This is much shorter than we would normally do. It's still been an hour, but you know, like
This is what we originally shot for.
yeah, we were already always going for an hour, and then like we ended up just having too much fun talking about stuff. So
Yeah. It's a
yeah,
good time hanging out with you. You know?
thank you, man. It's a good time hanging out with you as well. I don't go out much, so I talk to you more than just about anyone other than my wife. So that's I mean that's an indictment of how sad my social life is. But yeah,
I don't go out either. Yeah.
no, exactly. Yeah, we're both living in wastelands. So yeah. It's been really fun doing this episode. I've really enjoyed researching this one. This is one of the easiest researches I've ever done. I should also give a shout out to Simon Whistler, who does a podcast about historical events, who is kind of responsible for bringing this to my attention. And also, I kind of copied and pasted a lot of the article from his website. So thank you, Simon. Not that you know who I am, but he has like about 15 different YouTube channels, all of them like history, comedy, business, blah blah this, and yeah, he's really really entertaining. I'd highly recommend you listen to or watch his stuff on YouTube. And yeah, Derek, how did you find researching what's your boy's name?
Walter Hunt.
Walter Hunt. Yeah, what was that like?
It was interesting
Yeah,
that I didn't know. I've never honestly heard of him. I
right,
just
yeah.
knew that the guy that invented the safety pin, nobody really knew.
Mm,
And so to find out that he invented so much stuff
yeah.
and never really made it money wise,
Mm,
um, God, yeah, it was pretty interesting. I didn't
yeah.
realize that you could do that without accidentally getting rich.
I know, yeah. If only you had like 1/10 of Thomas Edison's business acumen, who was like, I will steal your invention and make so much money off it and claim it as my own.
Oh
That's,
yeah.
you know, that guy barely invented anything. He takes credit for everything, but this guy's
See,
kind of the opposite of Edison.
If you mush them together, you got a solid inventor that has a career.
Yeah, and like a conscience, apparently.
Yeah.
So, which Thomas Edison definitely didn't have. So yeah, wow. But this has been really fun, and obviously this is our 50th episode. The episode following this will be a kind of a compilation of the highest scoring, or some of the highest scoring people we've ever had on this podcast. So I'll be pulling about 3 of those together and making one episode out of it, and that'll be going out around about the new year in 2023. But thank you all for listening, and 50 episodes have gone by so quickly, and long may another 50 come around, and we look forward to doing more content and hopefully making a career of this, because we really enjoy it and we love interacting with you all, and thank you all so much. Derek, would you like to say goodbye, please?
Goodbye, please. Haha, I did it finally.
You did. Why do I phrase it like that? That's such
I don't know.
a British way of saying it. We will see you all again in episode 50 plus 50.1. I guess it's like a bonus episode, but episode 51 will include new stuff. Ooh, new music and animation. If you watch the live streams, please do watch the. Oh, I should do the social stuff, shouldn't I? I should actually do that. Yeah, I forgot about that. So go on YouTube and follow History's Greatest Idiots. We are also on Twitch, but that's at While the Anger, because I have my own Twitch thing and really need to sort that out. You can also follow us on social media on at History's Greatest Idiots on Instagram and Greatest Idiots on Twitter. And also, if you go to patreon.com/History's Greatest Idiots, you can sling us some cash and get some stuff for yourself with our merch stuff on it, and also access to a bunch of behind the scenes stuff and notes and private talks with us. Maybe I can't remember what the rewards
talk to
were.
somebody.
Yeah, we'll talk to you for a bit of money. But yeah, thank you guys so much, and we will see you again in the next bonus episode. Okay, take care now. Bye.